Okay, welcome everyone to the January 2021 Family and Community webinar. I'm so excited that you're joining us, whether here during the live webinar or after the fact. So thrilled for you to take time out of your day, of course, like always. So from all of us at RACMA, I want to say welcome. If you're new to these webinars, RACMA is a small nonprofit. We currently run 4 homes located across the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. And RACMA's mission is that RACMA champions dignity in the care of individuals living with memory loss in a familiar home environment. So, as that small nonprofit, we're really trying to aim to build a place that is full of comfort and connection. And this particular webinar series, especially talking about music, we're going to talk all about how those pieces kind of connect. But this particular series is designed for family, friends, and any interested community members who simply just want to learn more about connecting to people living with dementia. This information is really just designed to give those opportunities to folks in the community to be able to connect, to share really great resources like we were just sharing before we hit record. And everything we cover in the webinar series is never to be taken in the place of professional medical advice. I'm a doctor, but not that kind. I'm more like, I want to talk about the in depth meaning of the cultural stance of something rather than medical professional advice. So this content really is to be considered a set of guidelines, practices to try. It's supplemental in nature. And if ever you're not sure it's right for you, please connect with your doctor or your loved one's doctor first. So, with that out of the way, we're going to be exploring today how music connects us, how it connects to our loved ones living with dementia, and how music can make day to day life connecting to and working with folks living with dementia easier. It's also going to help us understand how we can truly increase the quality of life for folks living with dementia. Because music really is a very simple tool that touches every part of our mood, our function, our feelings, and our memories. So, by participating in this approximately 1 hour webinar today, you're going to walk away with a better understanding of how music impacts the life course. We're going to review research on music and dementia, and we're going to discuss general strategies and best practices of how you can actually use music in working with and spending time with your loved one to connect, but also to help them connect back to you. If you've been on other webinars with me, you've heard me say that the relationship, you are generating the relationship, and it's really about creating moments of connection with your loved one. Music really is a great tool to get out of that conversational habit, get out of those question based habits, and really just spend quality time together. So that's what we're going to be doing. Of course, quick logistics around the webinar. Please keep yourself muted throughout the actual presentation portion. You can use your phone or your web controls. If you're calling in, you can use *6. We'll get to a Q&A at the end. Then you can unmute yourselves and chit chat as much as you'd like with me. The webinar is being recorded, so anything you share, others will see. I think that's important to let people know. We'll send out the recording afterward and any additional resources that we get or have that I already have prepared, as well as the ones we're learning about tonight. Video is always optional. You don't have to use it at any point to be participating in this webinar. I keep my video on so you can see my shining face as we talk about these topics. And you can always use the chat function to participate, to add your thoughts on something, really just any kind of things along that. Use your chat. And the last piece is just a little bit about me to make sure that you know who's talking to you. So my name is John Anna Gans. I am RACMA's training manager. I have had the privilege of being part of the RACMA staff since December of 2019. So we're heading into year 2. You can always contact me at jgans@racma.org if you have any questions or follow-ups or you want to talk about your ideas for the webinar series. And you can always call me at 612-564-3118. And that's my business line, and I don't answer it after about 4 p.m. most days because I work early and end early. But if it's important, you can always schedule time with me, and I'm happy to be flexible with my schedule, like tonight. So that's the quick rundown. Now, let's talk about what you're actually here to talk about. So, I actually want to just take a moment and ask you to think. I'm going to ask you to chat in. What is your pump up song? Like when you got to like get yourself ready to go and, something kind of big is coming up. It's kind of like you're like pump up music, what song is it? So for me, I really love Eye of the Tiger by Survivor. Yes, the Rocky song. I played it a lot in pep band in high school. And I just, I love it. Like when I really got to get going and get jazzed, for me, it's Eye of the Tiger. But I do want to take a moment. How about other folks? So you can go ahead and chat in. Happy trails. Awesome. Anyone else? Walking on Sunshine. Oh, I love it. That's an amazing song. See if there's anyone else. Yeah. Dolly Parton's 9 to 5. Absolutely. I love it. So, when you think about that music, so even as you're sitting here right now thinking about it, do you feel your energy level changing at all? Oftentimes, the research shows that even just thinking about the music that brings us joy, thinking about the music that brings us excitement, the way that music is integrated in every part of our life is an essential tool for connecting to and managing our emotions, which I just think is so amazing. When you think about the life course, thinking about the earliest songs you can remember, thinking about what emotions come up for you connected to those songs. Of course, not everyone has really happy memories around that, but for many folks, thinking through that's how they actually connect back to those early memories. And that's part of why we want to talk about how we can use this with our loved ones living with dementia. Because from the time that we are very young, all the way through the end stages of life, we are surrounded by and absorbing and connecting to music, whether it's commercial jingles, religious tunes, hymns, etc., or just whatever's on the radio that day. So let's talk real quick about the research because I think it's always really important that we ground our understanding in what research has told us about the function and the roles of music. So, research into the role of music in our daily lives gives us that understanding, in particular, about emotional regulation and social bond development. So, this is just general research, it's not specific to dementia. So, researchers have demonstrated the considerable effects on our cognitive process, our emotional processes, and our actual exhibited behaviors. So, it indicates that people use music to serve a whole bunch of functions from that emotional regulation, like the hype up music, or it could be self expression. I don't know about you all, but I made a lot of mix CDs for loved ones over the years to like express how I felt about people. So that's a way that we can use music because we of course can use music to actually sing, dance, etc. But they've also really demonstrated the ways in which connecting through music actually creates greater social bonds between us. That's why we make mix CDs. That's why we sing or play our instruments for our loved ones or people we care about. Music helps us facilitate normal daily processes. So that's a huge and complex component of how music fits into every single day of our lives. Then there's, of course, grief and loss. So, music is an ideal choice for helping people work through periods of grief, loss, or bereavement because music actually helps us meaningfully process. If you've ever had a bad breakup, which I've had a couple, you listen to sad music about breakups to make yourself feel sad so you can connect to those feelings in a meaningful way. Just like other things, other types of loss. So, particularly loss like death or estrangement, we can listen to music to be able to not just feel sad about it, but to truly and meaningfully evoke feelings intentionally that allows you to process the information connected to the loss. So there's this natural interaction that researchers have demonstrated that we can use music to help ourselves work through tough things. Research has demonstrated that participating in group music making can contribute to the quality of life of pretty much anyone, but specifically older folks. So, this particular research from Hallman Creech uh, looked at the quality of life for all folks above the age of 55. And they looked at what happened when you incorporate folks into actively making and participating in making music. So they looked at the use of instruments, singing, as well as any kind of other activities, just like clapping your hands or uh, stamping your foot in time to the beat. Those folks who were participating in music making had consistently higher measures of well being than those participating in any other type of social group activity. So, the connections that come through music really bring us those social, cognitive, emotional, and other health benefits, which I think is just so exciting. And particularly, this study was really looking at connections around well being and the idea of well being for older citizens. They really found that it matters. Music matters to us. Music is also used to cultivate cultural diversity. So, music, and especially early exposure to a wide variety of musical styles, including music from different cultural backgrounds or international music, can increase our cultural sensitivity, our cross cultural understanding, as well as increasing our sense of diversity in identity formation. So, you yourself become a more diverse human being by exposing yourself to a wide variety of music every day. So, with this kind of quick background on the research and the roles of music in everyday life, I think it connects very easily and readily to the research in music and dementia. And because you're here, you probably already know a little bit about this, but for those who are newer to the topic, I think it's important that we go through it. So, fundamentally, research has demonstrated that the use of music and music programs in a dementia care setting sees significant changes in the individuals who are being served. Overall, quality of life increases through a variety of areas that impact the functions and experience of those living in assisted care settings. So, one of the big ones is that it significantly improves cognition, social well being, and it reduces agitation. And we've previously talked about the difference between agitation and aggression. Agitation really is just a signal of a state of uneasiness. They're not settled. That person isn't settled. So these researchers particularly looked at the impact of just playing music, really just having enjoyable music on in the background. And they found it really decreased that agitation, but really increased people's cognition. So folks who are struggling with memory loss actually have higher rates of cognition when they can hear music that they can connect with. And it actually increased the ability to socially bond across those units of care. So if ever you're like, I don't know how to connect, music is a way to connect. Additionally, researchers looking into the world of dementia and music have found that the intentional use of music can stimulate reminiscing or memories that have been otherwise inaccessible to the person living with dementia. And fundamentally, what that does for you as a loved one or a caregiver is it allows you opportunities to connect to your loved one or the person you're providing care for. That stimulating of memory and connection can also help folks retain skills for a longer period of time. That research isn't quite as, hard and concrete and fast and as well developed, but it is truly an increasing area of research that shows that stimulation of memory and connection actually helps folks manage the symptoms of dementia in a longer term sense. And this was my favorite piece of research in reviewing. It is so recent, it is from 2020. Um, what these researchers found when really looking at connecting folks to music that mattered in their life. So, not just any kind of music, specifically the music that mattered in their life, increased a sense of self while listening to the music. When the caregivers or family members who were participating in the study, when they played music from the person's earlier life, it actually triggered connections and memories to that song that that person was able to connect with. Now, they weren't always verbal, so they weren't always using verbal communication, but they were meaningfully connecting. And it brought moments of cognition and cognizance that their caregivers described them as being themselves again, which, especially for those who are loved ones living with and alongside the person who has dementia, that can be one of the most devastating aspects of watching that disease progress is that you lose that feeling of connection. But music is an opportunity to have that sense of self come back, even just a little bit, and even just for a short period of time. And that to me, if nothing else, proves the power of music in everyday life, and particularly in being a loved one of someone living with dementia. So now that we kind of have that background, I really want to start talking about how do we actually use music in a meaningful way. So, this first slide here is really just giving people the basics of what you are aiming for when you're using music to connect to someone who's living with dementia, whether that is your loved one or someone you're providing care to, or a more distant family member. These are the strategies you're going to want to use every time, no matter what. So, first and foremost, you got to choose their preferences. So, what that really means is you're selecting music based on the person living with dementia's preference. And it's important to understand just because someone is 70, 80s, 90 years old doesn't mean that they love 40s jazz. I don't know why that's a thing, but people seem to think that 40s jazz is always the answer for older folks. It might be the answer for that person, but it's not the answer for everyone. So it's really important that you know the person and you really understand what types of music that they prefer, the kinds of music that bring them joy or change their mood for the better. You really want to encourage movement and the active enjoyment of music. Across the board, one of the big things that comes up again and again for folks is a concern that their loved one living with dementia does not get enough movement. And that's not just for folks who still have full mobility and range of motion. The concern about not getting enough movement is across the entire dementia life course. So, music can really help our loved ones get that physical movement and enhance our enjoyment of the experience. So, even if your loved one can dance with you, get them up and dance with them. Carefully, gently, of course, take your time, but dance with them. If they're not able to dance anymore, even something as simple as getting folks to tap their feet, to clap, to nod their head, any sort of additional movement actually increases heart rate, increases breathing rate, which overall has net positive effects for the human body. Get folks to engage actively in any way that you can, because what that does is not only help increase their physical health and probably yours because you're doing it too, it creates memories worth cherishing together, even if that person no longer has verbal skills to talk with you about their day. You can still create those special moments all the way through the end of the life course in this really cool and interesting way by just using music that they love and encouraging them to move with it. Be sure that you're noting responses. So, especially if your loved one currently lives in an assisted care facility, note what your loved one likes. So, if there's a particular song, play that to them. And if, for example, you're looking for ways to not have to try to carry on conversation, especially while there's limited visiting during the COVID-19 pandemic, you can actually just play music together over the phone or over the Zoom call or the Skype or whatever it is in lieu of conversation, especially if you can get folks to sing with you or nod their head to the music. That really is a way to note what's going on. So you really want to focus like how are they responding to this particular piece of music? So sometimes you can just tell them, I just want to enjoy the music together. And if your loved one does react negatively or they shut down, they get really quiet, they kind of withdraw. Or, of course, the other option is to get louder and express their discontent with what's happening. You really want to make note of that and then share it with your loved one's care partners. So, share it with the folks who work at RACMA, our care partners at RACMA. Share it with other loved ones in your family as a way to be able to facilitate that having better connections with your person living with dementia to other family members. Give them the tools that you're learning. So, some really specific responses you're going to want to be looking for are changing levels of alertness, right? Because, especially depending on the dementia diagnosis, you're going to have very different attributes that you're going to be looking for. But one that's consistent is changing levels of alertness. So, no matter where they are in the stages of dementia, you can always look for how attentive are they. Look for more or less eye contact, especially for folks who no longer have verbal skills. Smiling, laughing, Any kind of positive body gestures and body language. That's what we're really aiming for. You're going to look for the nuances of body language, but you're also going to look for mood changes and just the level of engagement that you're noting. So, if you know one particular piece of music really engages your loved one and gets them to connect to the outside world a little bit more effectively, share that with staff members, share that with other friends and family members, and say, "Hey, I know that my wife would love to hear from you. Here's an easy way. Just play this music together. Build that memory." You're also going to look to use music to evoke particular moods. So, as kind of discussed in the research slides, music really helps us get into a specific mindset and really set the tone for how we want to connect with somebody. So, it builds to our sense of experience when we're connecting and we're talking with others. You're really going to want to focus in on using slower, calming music as a general rule because folks can get really overwhelmed really quickly because it's called cognitive overload. It's just too much all at once. So look for music that is deeply important to your relationship. Look to music that is also a little bit calmer or slower. So highly, highly recommend do not play Flight of the Bumblebee on a loop, right? That's a lot of stimulation for anybody because that connects directly to the next piece of general strategies that you're going to focus in on. You got to really work to avoid overstimulation because this is especially important, even more so depending on the current diagnosis or the stage of dementia that your person is living with. Too much volume, too much noise, or simply too fast of a beat can really make anything happening around your loved one overwhelming. Their sensory processing capabilities are significantly reduced as a direct result of their diagnosis. So focus on the music when you are spending quality time and really make sure that the TV's off. Maybe you're not trying to talk over the music and that you've chosen music that really can connect in a meaningful way without that overwhelm. And the last piece, y'all, I love me some YouTube and Pandora, and I always choose the free ones. I will not pay for the music if I don't have to. But for this particular strategy, make sure it's commercial free if at all possible. So pick a CD, pick a tape, pick whatever is your main medium of music, um, free of commercials. So, especially if you're trying to use the music to reminisce, which we'll talk about in a minute, or engage your loved one in a difficult moment, commercials become very, very confusing for someone living with dementia. So you might be having this amazing moment, and then the commercial gets loud and jumps on. That can really prompt cognitive and sensory overload. So you really want to make sure that you can control your music source, skip commercials or any other interruptions of the music if at all possible. Ooh, Gordon chatted in. Pick music that they can sing along with, not just listen. That's a great piece of advice, Gordon. Thank you so much for sharing that. Absolutely. So, just to add as a general strategy for those of you listening, truly pick music that people can connect to and sing with. So, now that we've talked about our general strategies, I want to really talk about specific caregiving strategies. I think this is an important topic because so often loved ones do end up serving caregiving roles. And for those of you who are listening to the recording, you might actively be a caregiver for your loved one right now. So, we want to talk about how can we actually use music when trying to provide care. So, first and foremost, go ahead and start your day off on the right foot. This might even just be a visit. So, it doesn't have to be in care contexts, it can just be your visits too. Pick music to start off the day on the right foot or to set a mood or a tone for your loved one. So, you're really going to want to pick music that can be a soft start, for example. Or if you know that your loved one has a really big event that they're really excited about, picking music that kind of gets with that vibe. Go ahead and really choose and select music to kind of set the tone for the interaction or just for the day as a whole. Because remember, I say this a million times, they will not remember what you did. They will most likely not remember what you said or the piece of music you listened to. What folks do still hold on to, no matter what, is how they felt with you. So make sure to use that music so they can carry that feeling all day with them. You can also use music to interrupt repetitive behaviors, and particularly looking at a couple of dementia diagnoses, repetitive behaviors are a frequent way to express themselves and a way to express that they have an unmet need. So, if your loved one is expressing confusion or distress or their need through those repetitive behaviors, like asking the same question over and over, um, knocking on tables is a big one, or like using your walker and kind of like rattling your walker, things like that. Any kind of repetitive behavior, music can become a great tool for distraction and redirection. So focus in on playing soothing music at a pretty low volume. You don't want to overwhelm somebody, especially if they're trying to express an unmet need. Pick that music that they love. Are they someone who I don't love holiday music, but I know that there's people out there that do? Do they love holiday music? Do they find it really helpful? Did they love it at every point in their life? Play holiday music, even if it's not the holiday. Play any music that someone is going to know, connect with, and be able to redirect them. And especially if the repetitive behavior is really challenging, pick their favorite song that you know that they can sing to, or at least will have some reminiscence with. Play that song, use that to redirect their attention and get them out of the repetitive behavior. You can go ahead and use music to decrease the distress response. So, if you've sat through any other webinars with me, you know I feel very strongly about not talking about someone having behaviors. Behaviors are always a part of our distress response. It's saying that something isn't quite right. It might not be anything bad, but they are thirsty, they are tired, they are hungry, they need their medication, they just feel bored and frustrated, right? Like your loved one might be trying to communicate a lot through a distress response. And especially if that distress response is escalating and you're struggling to get them to come back to a state of well being, picking a favorite song of theirs, picking an important song between you and that person in your relationship, or just picking generally calming music can really bring down those signs of distress and agitation. Remember, this was a different webinar. So if you haven't seen the distress and agitation webinar and decreasing distress, I'll give you the quick rundown. Human distress response follows this kind of curve. So it's like a pretty easy bell curve for the most part, but it has a real sharp steep, little steeple at the top there. And during the first phases of escalation, when someone's frustration is rising, that's where we're going to really use calming or favorite music to bring them back down. At the apex of distress, when someone's coping skills and capabilities far exceed what they're experiencing, we do not try to use music. We're not trying to intervene. An apex of distress has to let itself kind of go through that process. And y'all, I think that's true across the life course. When you're really upset, you can't take in anything, right? But then there's that de escalation phase. When someone moves out of that apex into the de escalation phase, that's a perfect time to use music. So during escalation and de escalation, we're really going to focus in on using calm music to calm, to bring back to a state of well being. And during the apex of distress, we're always just focusing on safety measures at that point. You can absolutely use music to build a sense of community. So, this is particularly true for folks living in assisted living communities. If you're coming to visit just your loved one, sometimes we have other folks hanging around, right? Because there's social and shared spaces. Use the music of your loved one and that you share with your loved one to build that sense of community around you. So, music, like we talked about, is used to connect people. And really, assisted living facility is no different. Or if you take your loved one out to a family outing or event, use music to connect everybody. Okay. Get everybody moving to the same song or singing along to the same tune. These kinds of actions actually increase the positive chemicals and hormones in the brain and the body. So, whether you're living with dementia or not, those chemicals and hormones are changing how you feel. And that can build that sense of community and connection, especially if other family members don't feel like they know how to connect to your loved one anymore or are nervous or scared. Y'all, music is the way. Music truly is the way. Get folks moving and grooving, get folks sitting around. If you're all sitting around a living room space, for example, right, without much to do, turn on some well known music and talk with people about what that brings up for them. Talk with them about the funny memories that they remember. And of course, get them to enjoy that physical movement wherever they can. Use it to create welcoming spaces. So, especially if you are a direct caregiver for your loved one, and your loved one might be afraid of places like the bathroom, or they feel really nervous around meal times, or even really resistant to having any kind of care and help, like getting dressed or undressed. Figure out the music that's going to calm them the most, which is going to be a process of trial and error, of course, but really figure out the music that calms them, that makes them feel safe and secure, or even if it just puts them in a really good mood. So you don't even need to find the safe and secure, just a really good mood works. Have the music playing in the space before you get there. So if the bathroom is a real scary place for them, have the music playing before you show up. Have it going to increase that sense of comfort and to really create an inviting and calming space for them. Have them feel as if they're really truly getting an invitation to be in that space and a sense of safety and connection with you. And then, of course, the last kind of big one is end out your day with music. So, especially if you have the opportunity to be a direct caregiver, or you're having a later visit with your loved one, for example, use music to ease bedtime routines. So, we've talked about in a couple of other webinars how important routines are to making sure that we can support our loved ones living with dementia. Use calming or sleepy music and use the same music consistently to set the mood to get to bedtime. And especially if they're experiencing sundowner syndrome, right? Where they don't feel very sure about what kind of time of day it is, or some folks, depending on their diagnosis, might get their days and nights mixed up as a direct result of sleep disturbance. So those are some specific places that you can really use music in providing care. If you wanna do activities, and I think it's so important to talk about activities, and particularly if you're visiting your loved one. Sorry, I got a notice on my computer, so I paused for a second. Okay. So, using activities to connect to your loved one, whether in person or distance, I chose activities that you can do in either way. So, much like Gordon brought up earlier, choose songs that people can sing with you. So, sing familiar and simple songs. So you're really going to want to focus on tunes that are easy, that won't bring a lot of extra cognitive overload for your person. So singing along to the music with your loved one can actually really boost mood. It can enhance your relationship in ways that we've kind of already discussed. And if you have access to instruments that you actually know how to play, strike up a chord on your instrument. Some early studies suggest that musical memory actually functions differently than our other types of memory. So, if your loved one was a musician of any kind, whether it was through singing or playing music, even if it was just the recorder, it doesn't matter. Those memories are often preserved very differently than kind of the other day to day memories that we have in life. So use that to your advantage as a way to meaningfully have an activity with your loved one that doesn't rely on talking about how was your day? Because we know that those kinds of questions, interrogative questions, can easily become overwhelming for someone living with dementia. So focus in on finding ways to connect through the music. So I think it's really important to also acknowledge if you're worried that your singing isn't any good and you're going to feel embarrassed, please know that your vocal qualities do not change the memory making process. So you're probably the only one who's going to feel embarrassed or hesitant. But remember, the most critical person is probably going to be you for the most part. And I'm not saying that there isn't going to be somebody else critical out there, but the likelihood is just so low. And to me, when I think about it, the embarrassment of singing in front of others versus opportunities to connect with my loved one, gosh, I want to pick the opportunity to connect to my loved one every time. I know not everyone feels that way, but I just really encourage you if you're really worried about singing, worry less about the singing and more about the memory making. You, real quick, easy things that are familiar, simple songs that a lot of people hold on to, especially because it's in the earliest parts of our memory, which we hold on to the longest. Focus on things like theme songs from TV shows that they would know or that they particularly love, songs that they've heard again and again and again that they could recite backwards, right? You might also look to things like hymns or other religious songs that they would know deeply, as long as it's not a traumatizing experience to bring up religious music, right? Pick that religious music, it stays with us. You can also pick songs from things like older musicals, especially if they were into musicals. As we've talked about in the past, I have dementia that runs in my family. If ever I end up with dementia, please do not make me listen to musicals. I had to listen to so many as a kid. I don't want to listen anymore, but I know some folks really love them. So grab that musical. Even something as simple as nursery rhymes can be really important. And some folks kind of like pause and say, I would never sing a nursery rhyme. They're not a child. You're absolutely correct. Your loved one is not a child. They're an adult who has lived a long and complex and storied life. Most folks know nursery rhymes because it was both sung to them as a child, but they sang them to other children, whether their own or like nieces and nephews or other children that they cared for in their life. So you're not singing the songs at them because you think that they're children. You're singing songs that you know they're going to know. So something as simple as Mary Had a Little Lamb. Reframe that idea that it's a song for children. It's a song designed for children, but that most people connect to. Remember, the songs we learned in our youngest years are the ones that stick with us, especially if we had opportunities when we're older to use those songs again. So you can also think about carols. Holiday carols are a real big deal. You can go ahead and use those too. So that is a great and easy connection opportunity and an activity to do with your loved one. This one, I love this one so much. This is one of my favorites. So it's the jukebox playlist. Most folks living in care settings are of a certain age that they recall what a jukebox is and what you used it for. Where you'd get the coin, you'd go put it in the machine and select a song. So this is just you being a human jukebox, essentially, with the magic of the internet and smartphones and whatnot. So you can use a very similar approach, especially for folks who are in earlier stages of dementia with a higher level of cognitive recall and function. Give your loved ones some tokens, some coins if you actually want to give them coins. It doesn't matter. Just give them something and say, this is your jukebox money. You can turn one of these in at any time to listen to any music you want to listen to. And then when they turn in that coin, that token, whatever it is you're using, whatever that strategy is that you're using to get them to connect with you, to be able to say what they want or don't want, right? Spend time once they've turned that token in, spend time listening to the song with them, going back to some of those key things of encouraging singing or movement or asking them what the song means to them if they're able to share with you. Or if it's a piece of music that you have a connection to in your relationship, you can listen to the music and then tell them the story behind it. It won't necessarily be you saying, "Do you remember when we did blah 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 and this was playing in the background?" It's going to look much more like, "I have the most amazing memory with someone I loved so much, and this song was such an important part. I'm going to tell you this funny and amazing story." So you're decreasing the requirement that they know what the music is, but you're getting the opportunity to reminisce with them, which builds opportunities for you to get your emotional cup filled up too, while also helping fill up their emotional cup. If your loved one isn't at a place where they can actually give you a token and request the music, you can actually help them pick. So you want to give simple choices, this or that. Do you want to listen to classical or oldies? Do you want to listen to that theme song or do you want to listen to Jingle Bells? Right? And have them use their skills, however their skills are, whether verbal or nonverbal, and help them pick with you. And really just create that kind of jukebox playlist. So you can go ahead and play instruments and make music of any kind. Remember, music making of any kind significantly increases the experiences of older adults, as our research showed us, but also any age, really. So this might be piano, guitar. It could be something really simple, though, because y'all, I do not play piano. I do not play guitar. I played the tuba in high school, and I do not own a tuba because they are expensive and massive, right? Like, I'm not going to whip out my tuba to like go ahead and play music. But It could be really something simple like clapping your feet to a tune, stamping, clapping or stamping your feet to a tune. It could be lightly drumming on the table or a pot, right? It doesn't have to be formal instruments. I want you to think really creatively and really engage with your loved one with whatever's around to make music together. Remember, any kind of activity, lightly drumming on a table, whistling, snapping your fingers, all of that kind of music requires an increased use of breath, an increase in our heart rates. It can build on skills and help retain existing skills. It can also help folks connect to memories that maybe aren't quite as easily accessible for your loved one right now. So go ahead, get creative, just make music together and focus on the memory rather than how great you sound and whether or not you can be a rock band with it. Reminisce after listening to music together. So I think this is a pretty easy one. This is one that we think about quite a bit when we think about how to use music to connect to others. But especially if your loved one is living in a stage of dementia that they do not have verbal skills anymore, select music that's important to your relationship. Select music that's important to them. Listen to that song together and really single task here. So I'm going to really challenge folks in a world where we love to multitask and we have our phone and we have the TV and then we have the cat in the background. We have so many things going on. When you're choosing to listen to music together with your loved one, really single task in whatever way you can. Listen to that music together. And then go ahead, like I kind of said earlier, share the stories, the memories, or just the feelings that come up for you. So encourage your loved one to talk about the feelings that show up for them. Um, Even if it's not a specific memory, right? Like, "Oh man, this music makes me feel so happy. What do you feel?" Leaving it really open doesn't require specific recall. If they don't quite answer you, they might not understand the question. Make sure you're using your dementia-friendly communication skills that we've talked about in the past. Waiting that full 20 seconds before or after you've asked a question before you try to give more information. Using short sentences and using visual cues whenever possible, right? So if you're talking about a piece of music that you just listened to that's really important in your relationship and it's making you really happy, you can be like, this makes me so happy. And using that verbal showing that you're smiling. I keep hitting my button. Sorry, folks. Showing that verbal smile, right? And really showing it on your face helps give cues to your loved one that are visual in nature, which they're going to retain their visual skills much better than their hearing based and processing based skills. So go ahead and reminisce with them, talk about those things. Remember that the person living with dementia is always still there, right? And we talked about the movie from earlier, Still Here. They really are still there in some capacity. And it's on us as the folks who are not living with challenges specific to our brains to really lessen that expectation that the relationship is going to be completely reciprocal and returned exactly as we're giving it to someone, and really focus in on what kind of feeling are they going to walk away with. So the next time they see me, they might not remember who I am, but they remember how they felt around me. Did they feel happy, excited, connected, a little bit like happy stimulation? That's what we're focusing on building in our relationships to loved ones living with dementia. We're not necessarily building a reciprocal relationship where it's a 50-50 give and take. So use the music to your advantage. You can always do 30-minute music sessions. So particularly if you have a visit with your loved one or you're a primary caregiver for your loved one, get headphones, get like a set of real comfortable headphones that are pretty lightweight that won't feel overwhelming as long as they can tolerate headphones. Build a playlist for your loved one that is specific to them. So it might be a wedding song. It might be music that you listen to on your first dates, if it's that kind of relationship, or if it's a sibling, music that you sat around and listened to on the radio together growing up. Build them a playlist for their life of the music that mattered to them throughout. And when your loved one is expressing distress or boredom, or you just don't know quite what to do with your person because they're having a tough day and you have this visit and you don't want to lose the time with them, bust out the music player and their playlist of the music of their life. Have them listen to the music for up to about 30 minutes is kind of where they recommend, not much more than that, because that can get overwhelming or confusing. So that 30 minutes is kind of your sweet spot. And then just talk about the music, talk about what you remember, right? Talk about what they experienced or felt, and be sure that you're always noting responses like we talked about in our general strategies. If you notice that they start wincing at a particular place, or they stop engaging, or that you lose eye contact with them when they're listening and it doesn't seem to be positive, note what time it is, figure out what song that was on that playlist, and get that song out of there for next time. And then the last one, so this came directly out of another memory care facility down in Utah, actually. They had this as a recommendation on a blog when I was searching for good recommendations for activities that would be good in person or distance. It's called the Memory Bag. So, this particular option is to help build relationships and actually create routine activities with your loved one to help kind of prompt some reminiscence and cognitive skill wherever we can. So, what you do is you get a bag, you put a few small items in it. Like they suggested things like a teddy bear, keys, or a feather duster. Y'all, when I read the feather duster, I was not quite sure about that suggestion, but it's what they wrote, and I don't want to change their suggestion. But you just get small items, and then you ask folks to pick something out of the bag, or if it's a distance visit, you pick the thing out of the bag. And then you create a song related to it. So you pick an existing song, you make up a little one. If you're anything like me at this point in the pandemic, I make up little songs all day, every day. I sing to my cat, I sing to my refrigerator, I sing to my computer screen about anything, right? So just go ahead and create a song or pick a song that they would know and associate it only with that object. So it's really one object, one song. That's it. They connect. It's one of the easiest ways that they suggested to begin conversation with someone who's living with dementia at pretty much any stage. And especially if you do it earlier to get those connections, it's just an easy way to keep that connection. The activity also stimulates the brain, it maintains neural connections wherever possible, and it creates relationships that do not rely solely on conversation to meaningfully and powerfully connect with your loved one. So, those are the activities involving music. Pardon me. That brings us to your questions and your discussions. We had such a great discussion before this started. So, this is the part where you can absolutely unmute yourself. If you have suggestions or other activities that folks should know about, this is 100% the time to share. And if you have questions, I'll do my best to answer it. And if I can't answer it, I will find out and I will send it as a follow up to you. So, go ahead with whatever you got, folks.
On on the picture of the brain.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that I've been hearing is that when you're listening, there's only one part of your brain, or when you're speaking, there's only one part of your brain that's active. And
That's amazing.
they've shown people that have lost the ability for language
Mhm.
because it's only activated in only one part of the brain. But as soon as you start singing, then it activates additional parts of the brain, the other half of the brain. And lo and behold, the words to the songs and even just being able to speak comes to the fore.
Gosh, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I just sent you an email. I
Thanks,
gave
Gordon.
you a link.
Yeah.
Recently, there was the Houston Opera had a session on um, music and healing. And there was a doctor, a neurologist that was speaking, as well as representatives of places that are doing music, including there was a Giving Voice representative there. And she
Oh,
was sharing some of the things that we've been doing. But
I
that
love
was
it.
one of the things that he pointed out. Was really interesting that when you're actually singing music,
Mhm.
both sides of your brain light up.
Ooh, that's called bilateral stimulation, right? Where you can get all parts. I keep hitting this. It's so terrible. I talk too much with my hands. I know. I already know. It's something that every speech coach that I ever had was like, "Girl, get your hands under
Yeah.
control." I can't. Sorry.
That
Thank you
in
for sharing, Gordon.
yeah, in the formation of Giving Voice, that was the key difference that we wanted to have was we're not talking about listening to music. Like, I don't know if you've probably seen the video called Alive Inside.
Yes.
And it's fantastic what it does, but it's just listening.
Mm-hmm.
We said we need to provide a venue for people to produce music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was really surprising, we for a year we had an in resident. They were funded by the National Composers Forum, funded a poet and a musician. They were embedded with us for a year, listened to our stories, wrote. We thought they were going to write a theme song of like maybe 5 or 6 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
They wrote a whole concert, 15 songs,
That's
and
amazing.
we learned them all, and they were all new.
That's amazing.
Even the people with dementia. And
And
that's
so
what and that's what we performed at the Ordway.
And so for folks who were not part of our earlier conversation and are just listening to the recording, Gordon is actually talking about the Giving Voice Chorus. Did you want to give just like a 1-minute rundown on it so folks listening understand what we're talking about?
um, yeah, sure. There were a couple of ladies came to an Alzheimer's meetup group that we had back in the spring of 2014. One was Marge Ostrusko, who was at that time a recently retired producer for NPR. And the other was Mary Leonard, who was the CEO of the Alzheimer's Association. And they wanted to do something for music. And we brainstormed the idea, and they hooked up with MacPhail, and they started, and we had our founding concert in our session starting in the fall of 2014.
And how
Uh,
many Giving Voice choruses are there now?
yeah, there's about 45 worldwide.
So for those of you
All of
listening to
them.
the recording, check out if there's a Giving Voice chorus in your area, please.
Yeah, it's just givingvoicechorus.org is our website.
Oh, thank you so much, Gordon. What a valuable resource.
Yeah. So producing the music is key, we find.
Absolutely.
And the website is directed to people who want to start such a chorus. And I met with the lady out in Victoria, British Columbia, who's running one now, and in Salmon Arm, British Columbia, where my brother lives.
I love it.
But they're all over Australia, New Zealand, Europe, many different states throughout the province, throughout the state of Minnesota too. We've got choruses.
Oh, thanks so
They just
much,
keep popping
Gordon.
up. Yeah. You know what's interesting? Giving Voice produces learning tracks on a CD
Ooh.
for the music that we pick or
Mhm.
that they pick, but they pick based upon a lot of our own recommendations. Um, that's what Marty listens to mostly now. They
Yeah.
play that in her room at
Mhm.
Rockma because she knows
Oh,
the songs.
yeah, absolutely. Oh,
When I
I love
call
that
her to
Marty can still connect.
Yeah, when I call her, yeah, her speech now is pretty incoherent at this point, and she can't really see anymore. Her eyesight's gone. But I'll call if she's listening to music. We don't talk. We say,
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, you sing. Yes, absolutely. You are a living example of just singing together is still building a relationship and still creating memories worth cherishing.
"Yep, yep." I added "Ivor's Blessing" as one of my favorite songs too.
Thank you. Yeah, I did see that. I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding what that was in relationship to. But yeah, Irish Blessing.
Yeah, we the Giving Voice theme song is "Happy Trails," and we sing that at the end of every rehearsal. And the Irish Blessing is for our barbershop chorus, and we sing that at the end of every every session.
Love it. Real quick, Lynn, I think I see you've unmuted yourself. Did you have a question or a resource to share too?
No, I just think this has been fabulous. And I do remember reading some research also that music helped the brain in pain management. There's some research, that sometimes, when they lose their ability to speak and sometimes get frustrated, that sometimes music also can help if somebody's in pain.
Absolutely. I just wrote that down so I can follow up and make sure that I can
Mhm.
incorporate it into our staff training and information of like what a great tool.
Yes, yes, because sometimes I mean, they can't tell you what's going on, and
Mhm.
then it's frustration trying to figure it out, and sometimes music can soothe that also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Ugh. How about anyone else? Do you have any questions, comments, resources to share? Really, just anything? I want to make sure to keep us a little bit close to the hour. I know we started a little late today, but does anyone else have anything else they'd like to share with us?
No,
I don't think so. Other than I just support groups are awesome. I was in a support group for my dad for
Yeah.
gosh, probably 7 years, and that made all the difference. And this kind of webinar makes all the difference just to share information because sometimes you're just out searching on your own, and to hear it from another person is so helpful that has had the same experience. It's very helpful.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Lynn. Yeah, I truly, to anyone listening to the recording and even folks, if you have a loved one living with dementia, get into a support group. Even if you never talk, even if you don't ever share, just being in community of knowing that you're not alone because it can be so deeply isolating, especially if you're new to the world of dementia and you don't even know where to start. Really just want to echo Lynn's recommendation. Get connected. There are so many support groups out there. Even if it's Dementia and Friends, which of course is about sharing information, just even getting connected in that simple way of attending a Dementia Friends session. It's 30 minutes of your life, 30 minutes to an hour of your life, and it's just an opportunity to really get to know other folks and to be able to build that network of support for yourself and for your loved one.
yeah, we can be fortunate in the Twin Cities because it really is. It's one of the areas in the country where there really is a lot of support for people with dementia. When Marty was first diagnosed in the spring of 2011, the neuropsychologist that we saw that conducted all of this battery of tests
Yeah.
and came out with the MCI diagnosis. But we left with a bundle full of brochures and information sheets, whatever. And we just dived in
Hmm.
to a whole new world.
Hmm. And I think I love that you were able to dive in. So many folks talk about that their story is they got all those brochures, got overwhelmed, and didn't know what to do, and their loved one didn't want to talk about it because it's scary and upsetting
Yeah.
to know that you have a life changing diagnosis. And
Yeah.
so I just want to always encourage like wherever you can. If you're ever lost, like, listen, I'm a training manager. Like, I don't know all the things, but I can get you connected. So, to anyone listening, I won't always know the answer, but I will help you find it. And make sure that we have panels of our family experts on right now. Like y'all have been through it. So if ever anyone needs connection, I might reach out to you and say, hey, I think this person could use help, and you know more than I do, right? So just building that web of support for one another, I think, is so critical.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm just going to close out our recording. So, thank you, everyone. I do want to just acknowledge here is the full page of references for those of you who signed up. Absolutely, this will come your way so you can look into this research if you're really excited for yourself. I see we had someone chat in. Thanks. It's really quite practical. Use music to engage and be a light for others. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. As always, you know that I had to end on a pun because that's who I am. So, a little note of thanks. Uh, Connect with Rockma. Stay, connected with us. You can always call us at the general line. We're on Facebook and Instagram. And our lovely Marsha, who's on the listening today, is in control of those things. So please connect with Marsha and interact because I know she would be thrilled, and as we all would be. Again, if you ever need to get a hold of me, jgans@rockma.org. And when I send out the post webinar information, that'll be either tomorrow or early on Friday. So look for your email. We do always have that short 2-minute survey. Give us your ideas for what you want to see or topics you would be really excited about to hear about, or things you're just curious on. And you say, Johnny and I want to make you go research that and find out that information and put it together in a 1-hour presentation. I would be absolutely thrilled to take your ideas and do something with them. So go ahead, give me your ideas and feedback because we at Rockman really, really want them. So thank you so much for
Okay.
coming.
Thank you, Joanna.